My hi-fi journey. It's not what I expected. This is me, 35 years ago. Look at that denim jacket. Look at that car. That, my friends, is a 1979 Dodge Aspen RT with a slant 6 engine, and it made about 110 horsepower. However, I was 14 and this is where my hi-fi journey began. Actually, not really. We've got to go back a few years. It actually started in 1986 when I got my first CD player and my first receiver. A used 12-watt realistic. But it was awesome. And this is where my hi-fi journey began. Well, not really. We have to go back 4 years. In 1982, I got a portable cassette player. Wasn't a good one. But that is where my hi-fi journey began. When I grew up, the kids would all get together and drive down Main Street. And we'd park in what we called the bullpen, hang out and talk and do things that kids do, and fight sometimes. That's back when felony assault was just an accepted part of life. But Main Street was made out of bricks, and everybody had a car, and a car meant freedom. Everybody had a stereo, and the music was everything to everybody. It was omnipresent, and the person with the loudest car, well, they had the most teenage credibility. Street cred. And in rural Nebraska at age 14, you could get what's called a farm permit, which means all the kids that were forced into manual labor against their will and lived on the farm could drive to school-related activities at 14. So I opened up a Crutchfield catalog and picked out the cheapest stereo I could find, ordered it, opened it, and started hacking into the dash of the 1979 Dodge Aspen RT. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I got it hooked up. There were speaker cables all over the floor. I got tangled in them, ripped them out, but it didn't matter because now that 8-track was replaced with a cassette player. And it was the first time that I personally bought something with my own money and installed it myself that played music. Now, technically, it was a used realistic receiver, but my parents had to buy me the CD player. But this time, start to finish, it was all mine. And it was awesome. However, I couldn't wait to get rid of that car because the other kids had newer ones, and this one was old and it had chrome bumpers. I also couldn't wait to get a better stereo because the other kids had better stereos. Because even though that car and that stereo was everything I needed, they were not what I wanted. If you are a fan of the channel and you want to support me, well, you should support the sponsors that support me. And today's video is sponsored by Incogn. Let's face it, there's data breaches all of the time, which means your name, address, sometimes social security number, age, all go into data brokers' databases. And then they sell that information. There's a bunch of criminals out there that target you based on age and ethnicity. Identity theft scans also buy your information from data brokers, which means all of a sudden you're getting credit card bills for a credit card you didn't open up. Worst of all though, your phone blows up every day 37 times because your phone number is out there. Online security and privacy is really important to me. I made a video, it made somebody mad. They went and got my information from one of these data broker sites, got my wife's information, and relentlessly harassed us for over a month. So if you want to stop it, get Incogn. It's super easy. You just go to incogn.com/cheapaudioman, use the code cheapaudioman, and create an account. And you'll get 60% off an annual plan. You give them permission on your behalf to go after all of these data brokers and request formally that they take down your information. However, you could do it yourself. It's only going to take you about 13 years. Then they create a dashboard and you can check how many requests they've sent out, and then you get to see how many of these data brokers have taken down your information. The problem is it's going to keep on going. But Incogn will also keep on going. So go to incogn.com/cheapaudioman, use the code cheapaudioman, and you'll get 60% off an annual plan. So why don't you use a company that specializes in getting your information off of the internet? Go to incogn.com/cheapaudioman, use the code cheapaudioman, and get 60% off your annual plan. Thank you, Incogn, for sponsoring today's video. When I was in college, I got a job at Sears. My cousin worked in the stereo section, and that's where I wanted to work. The problem was they didn't have an open position in the stereo section. However, they did have an open position in the vacuum and computer section, which were combined, but it was adjacent to the stereo section, and I could see it. And I also got a store discount. And somehow, miraculously, I was approved for a Sears card. So I walked out of there with my first home theater receiver. Because the home theater was cool now. He had a bunch of speakers and a subwoofer. Of course, I didn't have enough money to buy the speakers that I wanted, so I bought a bunch of cheap two-way Sonys. That Yamaha cheap home theater receiver, a bunch of cheap Sonys, and Jurassic Park on VHS was all that I needed. It was wonderful. However, it wasn't what I wanted. A Rolex was almost a fictional character when I grew up. I knew that they existed, but I had never seen one. Might as well have been a unicorn. I was walking down the hall at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida, and the commanding officer had a really cool looking silver and black watch. But you never look the CO in the eyes, so I kind of glanced at it as I walked by. And I figured out that it was a Rolex Submariner. I thought that was super cool, because, well, I served on submarines. He was just a pilot, so why is he wearing a Submariner? I don't know what it was, but when I saw that watch, I had the same feeling as when I saw my first motorcycle and my first set of speakers. I don't know why, but I just wanted them. The problem is, a salary for a lieutenant junior grade was not one that would support a purchase, such as a Rolex Submariner. But there was an alternative, a compromise. It was an Invicta Pro Diver, and it was $150. Looked almost exactly like the Rolex Submariner, but the beautiful thing was I could afford an Invicta Pro Diver. So when I got out of the Navy, I bought the Invicta Pro Diver. Every time I have something big happen in my life, I buy myself a watch. However, generally speaking, those watches are a complete compromise, and the Invicta Pro Diver at $150 was not what I wanted. However, told time, and it was exactly what I needed. My parents, well, they worked hard their entire lives. My dad farmed the ground in Nebraska that's been in my family for 4 generations. And one of the parcels was actually claimed with a stake. I'm not kidding you. When they retired, they moved to Arizona. And when they sold their place in Nebraska, well, they had a bunch of stuff that I had. So they dropped it off at my house. One of those boxes was filled with action figures. G.I. Joe, Star Wars, all the vehicles. And I was very fastidious about my action figures, so I had all of their original plastic weapons and accessories and backpacks. I didn't want them, but I knew there was a bunch of crazy Gen Xers out there that wanted to recapture their youth. So I was gonna sell them. I was gonna put the whole box up on eBay for $100, but then I was like, let's let the free market decide. I put them up individually on eBay. Auction style. Well, let's just say the market for old vintage action figures was a lot bigger than I thought it was, because they did indeed sell. One G.I. Joe Snake Eyes action figure went for $150. It wasn't even sealed in the package. And by the time I had sold the majority of those action figures and plastic war vehicles, I had over $4,000. And I had been watching YouTube. I couldn't get enough hi-fi content. John Darko, Andrew Robinson, New Record Day, Zero Fidelity, The British Audiophile, and Steve Gutenberg. Now that I had $4,000 worth of action figure money, I figured it was time for me to get a big boy stereo. So I bought a pair of used Kef LS50s. I bought a used Moon by Sim Audio integrated receiver. I bought a new but discounted Marantz NR1711 for my new home theater system. I bought some ELAC debut reference speakers. Now life was going to be grand. I was finally going to be able to listen to true high fidelity. There was so much excitement, so much anticipation as I took everything out of the box and hooked it up. This had been a journey that I had been on for 30 plus years. And now I was going to be an audiophile because I was buying audiophile equipment. So I hooked it up, turned it on, and wasn't very good. I thought there was something wrong with me. I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, does this sound good? Is this supposed to be what I like? because it kind of sounds, well, there's no bass. There's no sizzle on top. It seems so in the middle. Almost sounded like it was coming from a TV. Now the Marantz, it sounded good. It sounded awesome. So I compared the expensive $2,000 integrated amplifier to my fairly reasonably priced $650 home theater system, and they pretty much sounded the same. The $2,000 integrated amp sounded a little bit better, but not $1,300 better. And my $600 ELAC debut reference speaker sounded way better than the $1,200 KEF LS50s. And finally, after trying to gaslight myself into thinking that this sounded good, I got mad and I sold it. I got so mad, in fact, that I took my cell phone, pressed record, and recorded my first YouTube video about 4.5 years ago. I've made over 1,100 videos, and at this point I've gotten to listen to hundreds of different pieces of hi-fi wonderment. The latest, the greatest, cheap, expensive, beautiful, ugly, and I couldn't get enough of it. When I first started the channel and got some traction and companies started sending me stuff, I never said no. It all came in. It got stacked up in the dining room. Amps, speakers, turntables, everywhere. And I got everything I wanted. Most of it sounded good. Some of it sounded exceptional. But the weird thing is, none of it gave me what I thought I wanted. You know, the weird thing about music is that it's emotional. Most of the music I listen to is probably looked down upon by most audiophiles. It's compressed. It's not well recorded. But that's the stuff I remember. Metallica gave me energy. Alice in Chains' Jar of Flies got me through a really sad breakup. And Korn got me through my first deployment on a submarine. Most of the music I listen to today is the music I listened to in 1990. In that 1979 Dodge Aspen RT. My taste has expanded a little bit because of my awesome patrons that have awesome recommendations for music I wouldn't normally listen to. Lena Hall is fantastic. You should really check her out. She does, well, covers of 90s music. Here's the weird thing though. Music is emotional. And you can't measure emotion. Unless maybe you do a brain scan. But normally you can't measure emotion. You can't measure love. You can't measure what it's going to take to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It can't be quantified, categorized, or thrown on a spec sheet. The power to elicit an emotional response via music is an elusive one, and it's a deeply personal one. And if we're being honest, how something sounds is only part of how something makes us feel. My journey started in 1982 with a crappy portable cassette player that my parents bought for me at a pharmacy. I graduated to a crappy used realistic receiver and finally to a crappy car stereo and a crappy car. I reference that Dodge in a lot of videos. And I'll go in and I'll grab screenshots from Google. And a few months ago I pulled up a listing and there was one for sale. One, it was stupidly expensive for what it was because that car was undesirable in 1979, undesirable in 1990, and apparently undesirable in 2025. However, I was the perfect customer for that car. So I sold my fancy, fun car and bought that 1979 Dodge Aspen RT, which is right now at a mechanic, who incidentally is a viewer of the channel. My other fun car was way fancier, way faster, and way more reliable. But that car didn't give me anything close to what I felt like when I sat back down in that 1979 Dodge Aspen RT. Because in 1990, that car represented freedom. It represented firsts. The first time I heard Nirvana, the first time I heard Soundgarden. All the music that I listen to now, I heard for the first time in that car. And even though they're not the exact same feelings I had 35 years ago, they're similar enough, even if what I have today is a bit of a shadow of what I had 35 years ago. I thought I wanted a Rolex. I thought it meant something and that when I had it, it would make me feel something. It did make me feel something. It made me feel weird. It made me feel like I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. It didn't make me feel the way I thought it would make me feel. When I got fancy hi-fi, it didn't sound good. Now, some fancy hi-fi does sound good. The point I'm trying to make is it wasn't what I thought it would be. And it wasn't what I needed. But actually, it was exactly what I needed. Because when I sold all those old action figures, it enabled me to buy the fancy hi-fi, which led me to understanding that some fancy hi-fi isn't very good, which made me mad, which made me turn on a camera and start talking into it, which led me to making over 1,000 YouTube videos about hi-fi and listening to hundreds of products. So high-end audio that sounded like crap changed my life, and it allowed me to listen to anything I wanted. And in listening to everything, all the stuff I thought I wanted, all the stuff that I thought would bring me joy, proved to me one thing. Turns out, what I thought I wanted wasn't actually what I needed. It just took me 35 years to figure out I just needed to go back to where I started. What's your story? Put it in the comments. Tell me where you started and where you ended up. And after you do that, check out one of these other videos, which is really awesome, about cassettes and why cassettes were the most important physical media format ever created. I'll link it over here or here. You should watch it. Go ahead, click on it. You're gonna love it.